All right, so today our training tips is going to be about one of the most intense conditioning methods you can find, and that is cardiac power intervals. So as always, we will discuss why you would use this method, especially since it's so hard, and then when to use it. So like everything being a recipe, you want to know when to add things, how much, and why you're doing it. So cardiac power intervals, why would we do this? So we want to use this method to increase the contractive strength of the heart muscles. So if you look back earlier in our programming, we did what people call road work or low and slow. We did cardiac output. And what that did is we had our heart rates at around 135-ish, which was a heart rate where the beats are enough to where the heart fills fully with blood and stretches. And then we did that over time with the idea that we would stretch the left ventricle and the heart and the your vascular network, and we would increase the size. So we have that adaptation. Now what we want to do is we want to increase the contractive strength of that heart muscle. So though it's not skeletal muscle, it is still a muscle and it can still be built. We can still work on it. So now that the heart's larger, we want to increase how powerful it can squeeze. And what this adaptation will do is it'll improve your heart's overall endurance, specifically at those higher heart rates. So for all the jiu-jitsu athletes out there, we're obviously going up and down in heart rate, power, not power, but you do have those games where you are at max heart rate for quite some time, especially in the longer duration matches. But also you want to be able to you want to lessen the fatigue of your body and your ability to create output at those higher rates of heart rate. So we're going to improve your oxygen delivery as well to help with all of that. So when to use this method? So obviously when you discuss something being the maximum or the hardest method of any type, you're going to want to refrain from just throwing it in the very beginning. So as we discussed, you want to do this after you have a very strong aerobic base, and we're talking about aerobic base in the sense of cardiac output. So I would want to ensure my athletes have a very good and very solid cardiac output base before we'd program this at all. So now we'll get into some of the keys to this method. The first one, obviously, if we're talking about watching your max heart rate, is we need to know what your heart rate is. So here, if you don't have one, you would need to have a chest strap. That's the most accurate. I don't really like the watches. Your distal output, especially depending on what machine, isn't quite as accurate. And for here, accuracy counts. So you need a chest strap and then some way to monitor that. If it's an app on your phone, you just want to have it somewhere visible. Or if it's your watch, you tie it around whatever you're working on and have it to where you can visibly see it while you're working, or you're a coach. So the key is what we're going to do here is obviously we're talking about quite a bit. We're going to work you up to your maximum heart rate. How do we know what that is? We're going to push you at max effort so hard for so long that your heart rate stops going up anymore. Hence the very tough method. So we are going to know your true max heart rate. No equations, no formulas. This is just simply we're going to put work in and get you as high as you can and hold you there. We're going to perform that heart rate anywhere between 60 to 120 seconds, and then immediately we're going to come off that machine and perform a heart rate recovery test. Now, I don't want to skip past this because this is a key, is you'll notice the pictures on the right there. You will need a piece of equipment that is full body. It's going to be much easier, and I'm not sure it's even possible if you're doing something smaller and like single movement. So Aerodyne bikes, I personally like the VersaClimber. Woodway or a treadmill would work as well. But you want something that's going to be at max effort, you're working your whole body, and it's going to really get your heart rate to spike fast. And you'll appreciate that after the fact, but it's definitely necessary. So like we said, we'll work you up to your max heart rate. We'll keep you there for a prescribed time. You'll then come off the machine. You'll perform a 60-second heart rate recovery test, which we'll talk about in a second. And then you will actively recover on whatever machine, or you could just do drills, whatever We just want you to stay busy and get your heart rate back down around 120. And that would be a repetition. And then you'd repeat however many repetitions you had for that session. So, like I mentioned, you want to use a full body exercise. Big key here because it's going to make this a lot easier. And it's, like I said, it's easier to get your heart rate up there if your whole body's working. So we'll just go through this and I'll get detailed on the entire steps to make sure we are all on the same page here and know how to add this to your programming if you so choose. So what I would do is I would have my athlete, after they've stretched and warmed up, hop on the Versa Climber, and we just go 2 to 3 minutes, low and slow, nothing crazy, but we're going to get the heart rate up there, around 130, 140, slowly climbing up in those 2 to 3 minutes. So, a little bit of a warm up. Once we are ready and I have the timer and everything's ready, we are going to ask the athlete to increase to a max effort and then hold that range when they hit max effort for anywhere between 60 and 120 seconds. I personally like 60, but as you're periodizing and working up each week, if you're going to plan this out, you could increase the volume if you'd like. One thing I will say as a coach, and if you're doing this on your own, you'll have to sort of internally key. But as my athlete is training, be it on a treadmill or whatever they're doing, as they get into that max range and are holding it, I'm specifically looking and cueing at technique or mechanics. So I'm not going to cue and tell them, pump it, get harder. There's no cheerleading. We're looking at them and their mechanics as they fatigue because we really want to watch that, especially when we look at competition, but we want them to be able to control their body under fatigue. So that's one coaching note. So they're at max effort, they hit it, we start the timer, 60 seconds expires, we say, okay, stop, they dismount the Versa Climber. I have then noted their max heart rate, so we'll say their max heart rate was 160 to keep things easy. We will then have them assume the position that you see this young man in, where knees slightly bent, hands on knees, a nice rounded back, and he'll be taking deep inhalations and deep full exhalations. The key here is we want the athlete to focus on recovering. So that's their whole purpose. And we're going to start a timer for 60 seconds. So they are recovering and we are watching the heart rate, or you could watch your own at this point if you're alone. After the 60 seconds, we will take their heart rate again, and we'll say for this instant it is 130, and we note that. So that number alone, with those two numbers, we can figure out what the heart rate recovery is. And what we do is take the max minus the recovery. So in this case, 160 minus 130, they have a heart rate recovery of 30. The higher the better. Obviously, there's a certain point of diminishing returns, but we're looking for 30 plus in most athletes for BJJ. So after that 60-second heart rate recovery test, what we'll do is have them, either hop back on the Versa Climber or maybe, jog it out on a treadmill, walk, whatever it is. We just want them to actively recover and then continue to focus on their breathing, continue to focus on bringing it back down, and we'll wait till they get to about 120 BPM. And we'll do this. This usually takes 2 to 3 minutes. So you're looking at overall with the test and recovery, 3 to 5 minutes of recovery time. Now that would be a repetition. You'll see my notes here. You would want somewhere in the range of 4 to 10 total repetitions. So they would repeat this 4 times to 10 times. I err on this lower side, especially with our athletes, because we're typically not going to do 10 rounds at this rate. If you're a boxer or whatever you're doing, that might be something to look at. For us, I like to stay 3 to 5 personally. So we do 3 to 5 reps, and then that would be a session. You want to do no more than 1 to 2 sessions per week, and you would definitely want to space these out and then keep them away from any really hard sparring or training. So overall, that is cardiac power intervals. It is the most extreme conditioning method, one I use after I've done an extensive amount of aerobic base conditioning, but it's really a great tool to use as you start to peak uh, and work that higher level conditioning in your later phases as you get closer to your main competitions. All right, that's it for this week, and I will see you soon.